All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the Achieve 400% Return on Investment with EasyVista Service Request Automation. My name is Chris Miller. I'm with FMX Solutions, and I will be the host for today's webinar alongside with Greg.charman from Kelverion. For today's webinar, as we go through our topics, feel free to post questions into the question section of the webinar. Xavier will be going through those and we'll take time to answer those as we go along. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. All right, so if we can get to the next slide here. All right, Greg, you with me?
Yes, I am. I think we've just lost myself as a panelist for some reason, so I can't present it.
I still see you as a panelist.
Yeah, but I'm not. It seems to have demoted me from. Can you make me presenter again, Chris?
Xavier, I think you have to do that. I see. It looks like you're logged in twice. Oh, you've got. It looks like you got logged off.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that, everyone.
Technical hitch. And try that.
Perfect. All right. So I think you still have.
You should have full control now, Chris.
There we go. Perfect. Yes, I do. All right, so for today's webinar, we're going to be presenting the integration and use cases and the benefits of what we've built within the integration. So my role in this is, my area of expertise has been integrations. Those of you who have worked with me before, we've done some integrations with Jira and some other tools. We're working on with Kelverion to build out some of our service request automation as it pertains to Active Directory. And our partnership has kind of evolved over, we've been working with Kelverion for the last 2 years and was built out of a need to streamline and reduce some of the cost of service request management. So a lot of the requests that we get are usually just, add user to a group, create a user, disable a user. And our partnership kind of evolved based on that. Kelverion has a lot of packaged automation that meets a lot of the criteria and use cases that we want to be able to build out. And in terms of price comparison to other competitors, and the company itself has also been very, very flexible and has been awesome to work with. Greg and I have been working together for probably a couple of months now, alongside with the other folks from Kelverion to build this process out. So within service request automation, what we're going to be showing you are 3 distinct use cases. The ability to create a new user through an onboarding process, the ability to add a user to an Active Directory group as it pertains to access to an application, access to a folder, and then also the ability to enable and disable a user, where the disable comes in handy for an offboarding request. So we'll be walking you through the end-to-end case, starting with a service request in a service apps portal. Greg will take you through the Kelverion backend, so you actually see what the processes look like, and then we'll see the completed request in EasyVista. So Greg, if you would.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. So yeah, Greg.charman, I'm one of the senior consultants at Kelverion, and been working with Chris and the FMX team to put these, drive these processes and build out the automation. So as Chris was alluding to, what we're talking about is effectively service request automation. And the first question people go, what do we mean by automating service management and service requests? Well, if you think about booking a taxi or a cab today, if you want to be picked up from a restaurant at 10 o'clock at night, you ring up a cab company and you speak to an operator and say where you want to get picked up and at what time, and they promise that a car will come out and they will collect you. And then you stand outside for 20 minutes in the cold waiting for this car, hoping that it will appear. Now, if you compare that to a service like Uber, which is around automating that function, you want a car, you open the app, you're presented with, give me your location, give me your target. It then promptly shows you all of the vehicles in the vicinity that could pick you up. You submit your request for pickup, and you're presented with an operator who will immediately fulfill your request, and then you can see on the screen and you can track that car right up to the curb as it pulls up and picks you up and identifies the driver to you. That process around of service experience is what people are starting to expect from IT, and that's what we talk about, of that service request automation. You have a request, you can self-service that, and then you can actually see in real time the approach, and the solution gets automatically delivered without having to engage a human being. If you think about the sort of work that IT service desk teams today, as Chris alluded to, people ring up, they want access to Active Directory groups, they need access to email distribution lists, shared folders, SharePoint sites. They want new VMs, they want new servers to be built. They ring in to raise a request to get software installed. Then you've got teams on shifts, your service desk and your IT operational teams who start their shift work. They typically have a set of tasks they need to undertake to make sure everything is as it should be, and to check that things have happened and everything that should have happened has when it should have done. Then you get onboarding. A new person joins the business, and that creates a whole load of tasks in your service desk for fulfilling that joiner task. And in today, those tasks are typically fulfilled manually. So, in a manual request fulfillment, what happens is the service desk captures the inputs from those processes and drives the approval, and then moves the work between those multiple agents for actually forming and performing those works. The actual fulfillment of those tasks is done manually, which is costly, it's time consuming, and the end-to-end process takes much longer to actually achieve than the actual work does to get done. So you have a long elapsed time in the process over the amount of work, and that makes it costly, time consuming and slow processes. In this modern age, there's no need to do these tasks manually anymore. They can be fulfilled automatically. So what do we mean by that automated fulfillment? Well, the key is to simplify the complex world of IT down into straightforward business practices that anybody can follow. So what you need to do is take a self-service portal where users can request tasks that IT can fulfill. Automation then picks up that request. In this case, we're going to pick that up from EasyVista, and we're then going to undertake that service request automatically, whether it's provisioning on-premise or going out to other services. And what that automated fulfillment means is you can delegate tasks that would often be too complicated or require high levels of access to somebody who can fill in your self-service portal. So that's all very straightforward from a descriptional point of view, but what does that actually look like? Well, as Chris alluded to, what we're going to do is to actually show you this in practice. So we're going to do a demo where a user is going to go into the self-service portal in EasyVista. They're going to submit a request that's going to go through the standard approval workflows. Once that's been submitted, we're going to pick that up from the automation, and we're going to use cloud-based automation to go pick that up, and then it will actually go off and execute some on-premise interactions with Active Directory to fulfill those requests. And then we're going to go back in and update EasyVista to mark that that request is now being completed successfully. So that's what we can do from the demo point of view. So if I step out of the presentation and I will go down to the portal, and at this point I'm going to hand over to Chris to drive the EasyVista portal.
All right, perfect, thank you. So the first use case that we're going to be demoing is an onboarding process. So we have a new user that's coming in, and we want to make sure one of the biggest issues that we've seen from clients, and I'm sure those of you on the webinar have seen this, how many times does somebody get onboarded, gets into the office on their first day and doesn't have everything that they need? So the first process that we're going to look at is the ability to create the AD account for this user. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this onboarding process. Now the onboarding process that I'm posting here does have an additional set of questions that I would not normally have client facing, but for the sake of demo and being able to see what we're doing, I do have them present, specifically in the case of domain and organizational unit. So I'm going to go ahead and create an account. So I'm going to pick on Mark Shell because I know he's on the webinar. And we're going to call this one, we're going to give him a password. And we're going to put him into the UK lab domain, specifically into the user's OU. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we're going to get a little pop-up that says, hey, your request has been created. It's going to give us our request number. So that's 259. So I'm going to go into Service Engine. And I'm going to view my service request. And there's my request, the employee onboarding. Now, in this case, for this particular request, I do have it bypassing approvals. We're assuming the request is being approved in this case. So in a normal situation, we'd go through manager or HR or what approvals are necessary. Once we hit kind of an in progress status and we update a couple of fields in Service Engine, the necessary automation will take place. So at this point, this request is approved. It is now ready for automation, and I'm going to pass this back to Greg to walk you through the Kelverion automation process.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So when that request is submitted, then what we want to do is have the automation pick that request up. So this is the automation user interface that we're going to use. So we're using Microsoft Azure automation as the back-end execution, and we're wrapping that with Kelverion expertise and processes to drive that and make that as a simple process. What we have here down the left-hand side of the panel is a list of what are called runbooks. These are the things that actually do the work. So these are the processes that are running and actually automating the tasks within the back-end automation. What we have here is a runbook, and then down the right-hand side, I can check the statuses and properties of the different activities within the integration. And what we have at the top of the shop is the integration module that we've put together that runs in the SIF to talk to EasyVista. And what this does is this leverages the APIs in EasyVista to discover the configuration, and then we can set it up to look at EasyVista for work to do, and then pick that request up and actually process that request. The job that we want to do is create an Active Directory user. So what I have is a child runbook that actually is going to do the work. And this is a child runbook. It's going to take in some information. It's going to go off and check Active Directory to see, can I create that user? If the user already exists, then we'll go back to EasyVista and say that can't create that person already exists. Assuming we can create them, then we'll go and set that password that Chris defined, and then we come back and update the request to say it's successful. If there's any other errors, then we can record those errors, and then we can pass them back equally back to EasyVista to say it was unsuccessful. So this is the doing runbook. This is the getting runbook. So what I'm going to do from a demonstration is this would normally be automatically running, but I'm going to actually just show you that we can pull in the information and grab that function. So this is our testing, and what I can do from our authoring console is actually run a runbook and test it in real time to make sure that everything's running. And if I use the testing console, I can show that we can pull in, we're actually pulling in that data that Chris submitted. So that's going to get started off. We're just building up the, that request has gone into the automation cloud. We're going to get a process where it's going to start running, and it'll build me up a testing sandpit, which will actually allow me to go off, run that runbook, and then actually go back off to EasyVista and start pulling in that information, process it, and then trigger off the child. So you can see it started running, doing some processing, and the log starts building out. So if I scroll down, we're pulling out some information out of the properties. Normally in runtime, you wouldn't be able to see this, but I've pulled this out. So here we can see the properties that Chris entered, Mark Shell. He put it into FMX demo as the password, users OU, KUK demo. So that runbook has now executed, and the child has been triggered and created. And then we've gone in and updated that request to say it's completed. So the job has actually been done and run and created that. And if I go down into my environment and pop up the Active Directory, I can actually show you that that user got created. So we go into users, and I'll do names, sort by name. And in my user's account, if I sort it correctly, will be, there he is, there's Mark, created, and he's marked as currently disabled so that we can then make him active as and when he starts on his day. So that's the automation actually running in the background. So what I can do now is pass back to Chris, who can show you some of those other requests that we have in the portal.
All right, perfect, thank you. So we'll go back to our demo portal. So the last two requests that we'll be demoing are the add to AD group and the enable disable user. So we're going to go into our cloud services here, and we'll go into, we've got some Azure services, and we're going to go ahead and add a user to a group. Now in this case, like I said earlier, for the sake of demo, I have a generic add user to group. However, when we actually build this out, the service requests are going to be more purpose driven. So it could be access to an ERP system, access to an HR system that has an associated AD group that we would attach to likely the service request catalog item, so that if I put in a request for the ERP system access, it would know that, oh, all right, this user needs to be placed into this group, and the automation would feed, we would feed that data to Kelverion to process it. However, for the sake of today's demo, we're going to go ahead and add Mr. Brewer to, we'll do test group 03. So this is more or less just a simplified version, but this also can be done from a technician's perspective that doesn't necessarily have access to the infrastructure. They can start this process off from EasyVista. So we'll go ahead and put Mr. Brewer into test group 03. So there's SR260, and then we're going to go ahead and disable a user. So we're going to do UK lab, we're going to disable Mr. Baker. So this would be in the case of an offboarding user that has an AD account. Once the necessary steps are done, this could be based on when their offboarding date is, whether it's immediate or in the future. Have that based on that set of date, populate that, kick that off, and then have that account automatically disabled. So go ahead and click OK. Both of those. So I'm going to now switch back to Service Manager. We'll take a look at the request for the creation of the new user, and then we'll also see the existing requests that I just created. So there's the enable disable user. Looks like the other request is already completed. So I'm going to go into no filter. So yeah, they're both actually. So the ad usage group was completed successfully. So we'll take a look at the employee onboarding. If we take a look at the ticket, we can see here that this was completed by the Kelverion automation successfully. And if we take a look at the workflow I built, you can see how that's kind of set up. How that we have that we actually have a process to check in the event that there is an issue, as the runbooks showed. They do have an exception process. So the exception process, if it's not successful, I can then send it to second level support to validate, is there a problem with automation? Did something change, or is there simply an issue with some of the naming convention that was supplied, or some other issue? So there is a way for us to deal with any sort of exceptions should they arise. So now we can see, we go hit the back button. So the add user to group, same sort of category, and the enable disable user is currently in process. So that gives you an idea of the 3 different types of requests that we can perform. So Greg, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the ball back to you.
Okay, yes, thank you very much, Chris. So one of the next questions that people talk to us is, how do I work out the benefit of automation? Well, what we have is what we call an ROI calculator. So based on all the years of experience that we've been doing automation, we know how long it typically takes people to do these tasks manually. And as Chris said, we have a suite of ready-built capabilities, and all around the things we've been looking at with the AD groups and that are all part of what we call a standard IT tasks package. And for each of those different existing runbooks and things like that we have ready built, we know typically how long it takes. So for example, to create an Active Directory user is typically a 60-minute process in most companies. By the time you've got the request in, somebody's gone in, you found the right person with permissions to go into Active Directory and create roles and other such thing. It takes about 60 minutes. We know how long it takes from an automation point of view, typically less than 5 minutes. And that can give you and what it costs to execute that gives us a saving both in time and potentially in dollars, because you can equate people costs for doing things manually. So we can sort of give you an idea of what the cost savings would be. And each of these processes we have has got those sort of time savings. We've got standard IT tasks. We've got solutions around managing Office 365. So if you've signed up to Microsoft's Office 365 management and services, the productivity suite in the cloud, once you've got it and you've got all users on it, you need to manage them, creating accounts, moving services, renaming users, adding them to groups in Office 365. So we have runbooks ready built that do that, and all of those could be tied into EasyVista at the front end, drive those processes. We've got things around cloud VM provisioning, so provisioning Azure VMs, Amazon EC2. We can even tie that in the same into on-premise like VMware and Microsoft Hyper-V. Same processes. We know roughly how long it takes to actually request and get a VM running in those sort of cloud environments, and it can take even longer on-premise. So we know how long it takes. We know the automation. And then the other thing that lots of people have done is they have one or more monitoring tools for their infrastructure. And when those monitoring tools raise an alert that is noteworthy, we need to inform somebody about it. Somebody takes that alert, they manually create an incident ticket in EasyVista. Then, having been created, somebody works out which support team can go and resolve that ticket. Well, we can actually automate that whole process of picking up that alert from the alert management system. And because you know what the alert is, you know who will be dealing with it, so we can actually build in routing rules to actually raise that ticket and assign it directly to the correct team within EasyVista for resolution. As soon as that team picks it up, they probably know what diagnostic steps they want to do. Well, we can automate the diagnostic steps. So when they get the ticket in EasyVista, it's already got the standard checks they want to do. It might be a server issue. Well, ping the box. Is it there? What's the IP state of that box, which network ports are open, what's the processes running on, all those sort of stuff. You can have that automated. And if you know what the diagnostics is, you typically know what the first line fix is. So let's have the automation try having a runbook that runs the first line fix as well, so that you can actually have a process where automation can fix most of your basic day-to-day issues to get the service back restored very quickly, and then you can hand them to human beings for those things which need a bit more diagnostics and remediation type information. So we can take all that, and using that logic for all those runbooks, we can actually build up a package around for your business, the number of users you have, the typical number of servers you got, the sort of cost you have for, say, a level 1 resource. We're able to build you a metric which says, this is what you can actually automate in your business, and this is the sort of savings that you can make. So what does that leave us with? Well, the benefits of automation, as you've shown with the ROI, automation can save you hundreds of full-time equivalent people of hours per month by removing that manual work, which frees your people up to work on things that actually drive the business forward, so service improvement and things. Your end users experience significantly faster processing of their requests, but it also reduces errors and downtime because you haven't got that manual finger problems of keying in the wrong value or disabling the wrong person. And a typical company of 1,000 users and 200 servers can see in excess of 400% ROI from automating those standard IT tasks. So there is huge benefits that you can actually make from those processes. And as I alluded to, we've got a number of ready-built service request automations. So those standard IT tasks, Office 365 management, we can automate joiners, movers, leavers processes. So taking components of the standard tasks around Active Directory, create users and adding users to on-premise groups like Chris and I just demonstrated, tie those into Office 365 for making those services and properties and permissions available for configuring Office 365 from that user creation, and adding in other components that are specific to your business into that joiners process. And equally that offboarding, when somebody leaves, how do I disable them from accessing Office 365 while we're removing them from their on-premise infrastructure and recover their usernames and passwords and all the rest of it that goes with it, and any of the other infrastructure you want to do. Cloud provisioning, which we talked about, and then that whole incident routing and remediation scenarios. So in summary, service request automation, it isn't around changing the business processes that you already have. It's around wrapping automation and that self-service around your existing EasyVista systems and processes, so that we can drive that fulfillment of those processes. Users don't need IT administration rights to do functions in future. The automation controls what can get done, so you can have first line use the portal and the automation to fulfill requests that get saved into the service desk without needing those additional technical inputs. So you can have people doing work that they wouldn't do today, freeing up other people to get on. And it's about empowering, giving users the ability to do things for themselves and on part of other people. So that wraps up the presentation and comments that Chris and I were going to do. So at this point, we'll open it up to any questions that you might have based on anything we've said or the demonstrations that we've done with the systems.
All right. Thank you, Greg. So yeah, if you go ahead and post your question in the window, we'll do our best to answer the questions. I appreciate everybody coming.
So maybe I have a question. How long would it take to deploy the integration in general, just for maybe one runbook?
Typically, it's a day or two for one runbook to get that deployed and connected through to EasyVista.
All right. very fast.
Yeah, and there's only minor work that needs to be done at the workflow level, just a matter of replacing the step that would normally be done by a user, then just becomes an automation step that gets completed by Kelverion. So.
And obviously, once we've done the first one, all the rest follow very quickly because you've already got the configuration and the connections in place.
Exactly.
Maybe another question is, does it work for SaaS and on-premise clients, or do you have any limitation for that?
No, it works with both SaaS and on-premise. So the execution platform that we're using in the background is a automation as a service platform from Microsoft as part of their Azure cloud called Azure Automation. So because it runs as a cloud, it natively works with anything that's software as a service. And then it has a component called a hybrid worker, which actually runs as an agent on a VM or physical machine in your data center, which actually does the on-premise interactions. So all of the stuff I've just done with Active Directory, I ran the runbook in the cloud, and then it interacts with the hybrid worker to go and do the work on-premise.
All right, so I have a question from Eddie. Can you automate copying AD user with groups? We normally have a new employee with a request to have the same groups as an existing user.
Absolutely, we can and do that for some customers. So you can have, when you're submitting the request, you can provide an existing user whose groups you want to gather, and we can go off, and the first thing we do is get user and find all the groups they're members of. Equally, with the automation, what it can do is it can look up the members that a user should be part of. So you can actually define a group of Active Directory groups based on, for example, a business role. So and then in your question is, this new user, Chris.miller, is joining FMX, and his role is going to be solutions consultant. Therefore, when you submit that request, the automation goes, solution consultant, what did Xavier define as all the Active Directory groups that Chris needs to be added to because he's a solution consultant? And we can just pull all those out and then go and add into all of those groups automatically.
All right, so I have another question. Can you automate, from Eddie too, can you automate the migration process from on-prem to cloud?
You can, yes. It's something we have done. It obviously is something that needs to be understood with the relevant customer to understand what they've got on premise and then how they're moving that to AD. But yes, you can automate that migration.
Another question, which type of integration is done with EasyVista? So are we using REST, or what type of integration has been set up?
It's REST.
We're using REST, yes.
Another question from Robert. Are there any limitation using this with Azure AD in hybrid?
No, there is no limitation. Azure hybrid is actually the typical scenario that we come across. So when we're doing with Azure hybrid, we can actually have you create the user in on-premise Active Directory. And then once it's synchronized, we can actually use the automation to extend the settings once it's in Azure around other groups and permissions that you may not have actually synchronized through to Azure Active Directory, like assigning permissions in Azure to Azure services or groups or clouds. So completely compatible.
So then I have a question from Melissa. We use templates in AD to create a new user. Can you use templates?
Yes, you can use templates. That is a supported function. Everything we do actually under the covers, the automation, Azure Automation uses PowerShell, so you can leverage the PowerShell commandlets with templates to create users. Equally, we can replicate those templates in the automation around sort of those business roles like I was alluding to. So you can actually define business roles for people and then build against roles. So we can do both ways.
All right, so then the next question from Fuzi, can we use Beanstalk?
For the automation from EasyVista, not directly. There isn't I'm not aware of an integration of Beanstalk into EasyVista.
I have no more questions. So, any more questions? Okay,
so it looks like so there is one question from Jay. So the webinar is being recorded. So we'll go ahead and once we get that recording set up, we'll go ahead and send that out to everyone.
Oh, we have one more question from Mike. Assuming we have to be running Oxygen to use this integration, please confirm. So yeah, that's a good question. Which do you need a specific version of Service Apps and Service Manager to run the integration?
The earliest version of Phosphorus that I would recommend is 321. That's we've had some issues with the integration, with integrations in general, not necessarily with Kelverion, but with REST in general in versions prior to 321. The advantage of Oxygen over REST or over Phosphorus in terms of REST is there are some additional interfaces that are available, not necessarily used in this particular integration, but could be used, especially in the case of interacting with custom tables, which is limited to some of the later versions of Oxygen.
So we have a question from Che. What is the version support for EasyVista? So I think we answered this question. 321 and above. More questions? So I think we're good. Chris, if you want to wrap up.
All right, thank you everyone. So we'll go ahead and we'll get the recording sent out to everyone, all of the attendees when we get that set up. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, to myself, to Xavier, and we'll be available to answer any of your questions.